Hello everybody, my name is Sniping is Fun. I welcome you all back to my next The 5 list. I'm going to present to all of you here on YouTube. And today's list is going to be a continuation of the series of lists I'm basically doing of certain video game companies and certain 5 franchises of theirs that need to make a return. I've already done one of these lists with a certain Italian plumber company, Nintendo, and that list I talked about the 5 franchises from them that I thought should have made the return. This time I'm going to be talking about one of their direct main rivals since the mid-90s, since the introduction of the PlayStation, Sony. With the Sony PlayStation, the 5 Sony PlayStation franchises that need to make a return. And when it comes to PlayStation, and from now on in this list, I'm not going to say Sony PlayStation. I'm just going to call it the PlayStation brand because it's a separate entity inside Sony, because Sony does TVs and all that other stuff, all the technology. So I'm specifically just going to be talking about PlayStation as a whole now, just by itself. I'm going to be just referring to it as PlayStation. PlayStation, since its inception around 95, 96 with the original PlayStation, and since then with every system it's done, the PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, the PSP and the Vita and whatnot, it's had numerous franchises it's created just as much as Nintendo. Not exactly the same amount, but Sony has in its day and throughout its time being in the video game industry, has created a ton of different video game franchises as well. And just as much as Nintendo, if not worse, they have also thrown their video game franchises into the trash and haven't used a lot of them in a long time. And this video is going to be talking about the 5 I think personally from them need to make a return. And without any further ado, let's get this list started so this video doesn't go on too long with the 5 Sony PlayStation franchises that need to make a return. And let's start off with the easiest one, the one I really think would probably be the most best one to come out and make a return because it was a pretty popular series back in the day, and that is Medieval. If you don't know what Medieval is, there was two games in this franchise back in the original PlayStation featuring the skeleton sword-wielding knight guy, Sir Daniel Fortescue. And if you don't know exactly who he is, if you played PlayStation All-Stars, he was the skeleton guy with the sword and shield. It was basically like a hack-and-slash adventure platforming type game. He'd risen from the dead to fight an evil zombie wizard monster dude to save his kingdom and whatnot. He was dead. He wasn't that good of a knight in real life, so he basically had almost redeemed himself in those 2 games after death as a skeleton trying to save the world as an undead skeleton fighting the undead creatures of the night and monsters and wizards and warlocks and all that other stuff. It was a pretty good series. I didn't really play it as much as say other people. There's a lot of Sony fans out there, gamers out there that play this franchise a whole heck of a lot. But it was a fun little franchise from them. It wasn't too dark. It wasn't too light. It was kind of in the middle. It's kind of like in that exact Nightmare Before Christmas vibe. It's not dark to be dark. It's dark to be kind of funny. It's dark. It has its dark elements, but it generally has a humorous atmosphere. And it's funny, and it does diversify itself from a lot of the PlayStation franchises. And given that today a lot of the original, especially the franchises that were on the original PlayStation seem to have been forgotten about except for 1 or 2. PlayStation really could use a lot of their old school classic franchise, bring them back into new light so newer fans of the PlayStation brand can start playing these games. Maybe do some HD remakes, of the first 2. You could do an HD, just like how it was the Crash N trilogy, the Crash Bandicoot N trilogy of the original 3 on the PlayStation. How about Sony goes out and gets someone to remake the first 2 Medieval games, bring them back so newer fans can know exactly about Sir Daniel Fortescue and his adventures fighting the undead and how humorous and cool those games were. And then you can once the reception, depending on the reception, hopefully it's pretty well and fares well, you could do finally a Medieval 3 after 20 some odd years. This is it's a lighthearted franchise, and that's one thing I think Sony really needs to get back into doing, because a lot of their franchises do nowadays are dark and mature, but they don't have that diversity. See, Nintendo, a lot of people complain about, Nintendo being too lighthearted sometimes, but they have franchises that dive into darker territories. You have Xenoblade and Metroid and Fire Emblem and Golden Sun and stuff like that. They might not be mature, but they tackle serious topics and more darker topics. And then you have Eternal Darkness, what they did on the GameCube when they do dark stuff like that, and they've worked with Sega and whatnot to get Bayonetta, and they have been doing darker stuff. Nintendo is they do stuff for everyone, for the entire family, for the younger kids, for the older gamers, and older people that would play video games. they do have some diversity. People don't really see it, but they do. And that's one thing I think Sony desperately needs, because a lot of their franchises, I mean, nowadays they're doing like Little Big Planet and Knack and whatnot, but there's a lot of those they can grab from their old school franchise that would especially please a lot of their old school fans, a lot of old school gamers and older PlayStation fans that were been around since the original PlayStation, by bringing back some of those franchises back from those days that actually were more lighthearted and varied, because then they can diversify their library enough by having games that are, for everybody, different genres, different mediums, different age groups and stuff like that. They're doing it now with some of the newer franchises, like I said, Little Big Planet and Knack, since like the PlayStation 3 and now on the PlayStation 4. But they can do it with some PlayStation 1 franchises, and Medieval would be just that. It's dark enough to be kind of creepy a little bit, has a creepy atmosphere, but it's not supposed to be scary. It's supposed to just be a humorous, funny, action-filled, platforming type game with a cool main character. To admit, Sir Dan is a cool video game character, and he should get a revival. They put him on PlayStation All-Stars because he was pretty much a big deal back in the PlayStation era. How about we have Medieval back, PlayStation? The second one will go to another franchise from the PlayStation 1, which you'll see more of those on this list because a lot of their franchises didn't make it out of the PlayStation 1 era or only barely made it in the PlayStation 2, and that goes to Tomba. Or if you live like in Europe, it's called Tombi. Whatever, it's the same franchise. It's been about a weird, wild man that wears green pants and has spiky pink hair, and he's platforming across the land, taking on an army of pigs. And the games were pretty fun platforming type games, and it had humor. It was very humorous and very colorful art style and everything. And like I said, with Medieval, it diversified itself from your Last of Us and Uncharted and whatnot. It fit into almost the same category as like a Ratchet and Clank, and maybe you can make it a little darker, a little more serious. I'm not saying make it make it edgy, Tomba of blood-filled. No, but you can maybe add a bit more depth to it, like a Ratchet and Clank or a Jak and Daxter or something, like a little bit darker, but it's still a cartoony, more like child-friendly, everybody game. And it was a fun, atmospheric game. It really was. I didn't really play it, just like I didn't really play Medieval. There was some PlayStation franchises I really didn't play a whole heck of a lot, and this is one of them. But I remember playing the demos a lot, and I think I've seen the full game somewhere, and I've seen reviews of it and stuff like that. And it is a franchise that I think should make a return, especially just like I said with Medieval. HD the first two games from the PlayStation, get a remake of them out, and then bring us finally a Tomba 3, so you can have more of a platforming atmosphere. Sony, PlayStation. You can basically give us you don't have that many platforming games, and that is still a pretty popular genre. And this is like an adventure platformer type game. It's not exactly like a Mario or a Sonic, but it's kind of like taking the platforming element and doing like some puzzles to it and some adventure elements to it. And it was a fun game. The main character was pretty cool. He stood out. He didn't make it into PlayStation All-Stars like Sir Dan did, but a lot of people wanted him in there. And if there was ever a sequel, he's one of the choices I see a lot of people asking for. And I do remember people remember the series. So old school fans would love to see the series brought back. And a lot of new school fans could finally experience something different from you, Sony, from you, PlayStation. Tomba. Now we're going to get into a franchise that is not from the PlayStation 1, and that goes to a franchise I've been wanting back for a long freaking time. And a lot of people do too, because especially since the last one came out, which is the third entry, and you should know what this is by now, they've done a racing spinoff and a platforming spinoff that was not numbered 4, and that is the Jak and Daxter franchise. How long, PlayStation, till we finally get a Jak 4? The story is still there. There's still more stuff Jak and his friends can do. There's no more story elements. It's basically turned from a platforming game into a platforming action adventure shoot 'em up game, and I thought it was cool when they did the spin-off with Jak X. And see, a lot of people don't like Jak X, but I quite loved Jak X. It was combat racing. It was pretty cool, pretty fun. It was basically like a more extreme Crash Bandicoot racing, Crash Team Racing type stuff. And then they did the Final Frontier or whatever, and it was okay. It was more vehicle based and flying, and then you had some action elements, but it wasn't anywhere near what Jak 4 should be. And Jak Daxter, Jak 2, and Jak 3 were really awesome PlayStation 2 platforming action adventure games, and the characters and the story and the lineage is still there. The companies went off to do The Last of Us and Uncharted. Why can't we go back to Jak and Daxter? They said, I've never seen like an interview that they weren't really prepared to do a game like that again or something like that. If not, get someone else to do it. I'm sure there's a lot of companies out there, a lot of people out there that Sony you could work with to have a Jak 4 made, and it could be a love letter to the fans, because probably a lot of them might be fans of Jak and Daxter from the Jak series. And it's one of the PlayStation 2 the Sony-based PlayStation 2 franchises I actually really liked. And Ratchet and Clank has been around since like day one. It came out around the same time as this on the PlayStation 2. And they still do Ratchet and Clank games. Why did Jak and Daxter just kind of disappear when the PlayStation 3 came out? It's one of those franchises that diversifies your library, and it's a beloved franchise. It's not as iconic as, say, Medieval or Tomba, but it's probably more well-known than both of those. And he was in PlayStation All-Stars. Jak and Daxter were in PlayStation All-Stars. Bring it back, please. I'm begging you for a Jak 4. Now we're back into the PlayStation 1 era of things, and this is going to be a double entry. And it's because they're both in the same franchise, and it's like a spin-off of one and whatnot. And one of them did make it onto the PlayStation 2, and that's called Parappa and Lammy. So Parappa the Rapper and Unjam-A-Lammy. Both rhythm-based games, really cartoony, 2D in a 3D world, cartoon-esque characters, rhythm-based. It was just overall fun. I never really played the original Parappa the Rapper, but I played the second one on the PlayStation 2, and it was really freaking fun. But I also grew up with Unjam-A-Lammy, and that was so much fun, and it's such a freaking challenging game. I made it to the last level years ago when I was young, and I could never beat it, because the game is difficulty, the game is challenging, and it really tests your rhythm skills. And if you played it, because they did do a remastered version now of the first Parappa the Rapper, like on the PlayStation Store and whatnot, you would know exactly what it is. And now all they should do now is bring back the second one and make a remastered version of that, and then do a remastered version of Unjam-A-Lammy, then finally give us Parappa the Rapper 3 and Unjam-A-Lammy 2, or you can do like I did here with this creative title. How about you call it Parappa and Lammy and make it a dual game, like it's supposed to be symbolizing Parappa the Rapper 3 and Unjam-A-Lammy 2, and you play as both of them, so you play rap music in like the rock music and all that stuff, the guitar-based stuff in the hip-hop rap stuff. It'd be diverse enough if you could do both of them, or you could just separate them and do two different lists. But it's another classic franchise from the PlayStation 1 era that only barely made it into the PlayStation 2, at least one of them did, and then since then has fallen off the map. And we have Parappa the Rapper and PlayStation All-Stars. You're going to see that be a thing for all these lists. Even the next entry kind of references PlayStation All-Stars. And it's like, you guys remember these characters to put them in that crossover fighting game like your Smash Brothers, but you can't remember to bring those franchises back and diversify your library by having long-standing iconic franchises to your thing, but you want to just keep making new franchises. See, a lot of people complain about Nintendo, I'm bringing them up here again, about them always only doing their old school franchises, but they still do new franchises. There's ARMS, there's Xenoblade, there's Splatoon, but they still have their Marios, their Fire Emblems, their Zeldas, and Metroids. They do new and old. They keep franchises alive for a long time because there's fans of those franchises. And then you make new franchises so you can get new franchises known. Sony has seemed to forget about that because every new generation they seem to forget about a lot of the stuff from their old ones. They have franchises that stick around like God of War and Ratchet and Clank and whatnot, but they forget about stuff like Parappa the Rapper, Medieval, Tomba, Blasto, Croc. Some of these other, in my next entry especially, because that's my main one I want to put on this list besides this one and Medieval and Jak and I guess Tomba. So all of them are really ones I really like to see. But like I said, it's a rhythm-based game, and you don't have none of those on your franchise. And Sony, PlayStation, how about you bring this back? Because then you can have more diverse genres in your franchises. And my fifth and final PlayStation franchise I feel needs to make a return, PlayStation. And it's not really a franchise as much as it was one entry that never went anywhere, but a lot of people it's an underrated gem that a lot of people think is one of the most iconic games from the PlayStation 1 era. The character from it was intended to be in PlayStation All-Stars as DLC and was scrapped because the game apparently didn't do so well. What a shock. And that game goes to, and you should probably know what it is, The Legend of Dragoon. You have your own RPG, PlayStation. You have your own freaking RPG franchise, which you don't have, I think, any of those anymore. You're all like, all your games are super gun-oriented, action-oriented, platforming-oriented, all this other stuff, racing-oriented, like Gran Turismo and whatnot, but you don't have a single freaking RPG of yourself. You have to rely on all the third parties for your RPGs. Nintendo doesn't even have to fully do that, and they still need a lot of RPGs, but because they have like 3 or 4 of them, you have like none, because this was your franchise back then. It was a one-time entry. Dart was supposed to be in PlayStation All-Stars, and it never went anywhere. A lot of people remember this game. This is like an underrated, iconic game from the PlayStation 1 era. And I didn't ever got super far into the game because it does get very challenging later on. But I do remember playing the demo a whole heck of a lot back then, and I do own the game on the PlayStation 1. And it's a really fun. There's fun gameplay, fun. It's very challenging, but it's easy to get into. But you have to hard to master, and it's an RPG, so it gets challenging later on. Fun characters and environment and story and art style and everything. It was a fun game. You could easily do a remake of this on the PlayStation 4. A lot of your fans and a lot of gamers would like that, and then you can go on and give us finally a sequel all these years later, and it's been like 20 some odd years since this game came out, and people still remember it, and people still want to see a continuation of it. They want to see a remake. They want to see a sequel. And this is like probably the biggest one that I think the fans, out of all my 5 entries, that the fans want to see. My biggest one is Jak. I want to see Return of Jak and Daxter. This is one I think a lot of fans want to see outside of Jak and Daxter and Medieval and Parappa and whatnot. But this, come on, PlayStation. Bring back some of your franchises, because you have a lot laying dormant. Probably worse than Nintendo, and they have a lot more franchises than you do. And that is my list, people. Sony PlayStation, the 5 franchises from them that need to make a return. Medieval, Tomba, Jak and Daxter, Parappa the Rapper / Unjam Lemmy, and The Legend of Dragoon. Hope you guys like this list. Put in the comments what you guys think. What do you guys think of these franchises? Do you think these should make a return? What PlayStation, Sony franchises do you want to see making a comeback in the near future? See you all later in the next video. Put in the comments what you guys think. We can discuss it. And that's all. Have fun in the comment section, and see you all later, like I just said, in the next video. Bye.